Hello there, world of tankers. Welcome back to another one of my videos. I am Blitz, and today I'm going to be talking about the KV-4. Now, this is quite an old tank in the game, and I really just wanted to talk about this vehicle because I really feel that not a lot of people go down this line anymore, and I actually really like this tank. As most of you know, I was thinking about going to PC last week, and I decided not to, but while I was grinding in PC, the tank line of my choice was the KV line, because I felt that the KVs are just very well balanced tanks. They've got good guns, they've got pretty good armor. The ST1 and the IS-4 are one of the best tier 10s in the game. So I figured I'd go for that line. I did some research on World of Tanks PC, and I really turned out to like the KV-4 along that line, and that's what I'm currently resting at in PC. But talking about that, I decided, you know what, I'm going to pull out the KV-4 and Blitz, because I really haven't seen a lot in the gameplay, and I just wanted to test it out because I personally haven't played the KV-4 that much. It's just a tank that you sort of forget about until you realize that it actually is in the tech tree. So I purchased the KV-4, did a couple games in it, and I'm actually really liking the tank. It's got very good characteristics going for it. So what are some of those characteristics? Well, first of all, you saw there I was penetrating that Tiger II with standard ammunition, and that's because this gun has 227 millimeters of penetration. Now, for a Tier 8 Heavy, and how old this Tier 8 Heavy is just an amazing amount of penetration. You know, that's more than the IS-3, and that tank even got a buffed gun after quite some time. This is the original gun that was originally mounted on this tank when it first came into the game, what, 3 years ago? That's pretty impressive judging how much pen it really does have. And not to mention your premium ammo, I think, has 286 millimeters of penetration. That's more than pretty much any of the other Tier 8 Heavies I can really think of in the game. And as soon as you put on Calibrated, which I would 100% suggest you do, it brings your standard APCR pen up to 303 and your AP pen up to 238. So pretty much you're never going to have trouble penning the enemies, which means you're not going to lose credits in this tank, and it also earns a fair amount of credits. Now you can see I was penetrated pretty easily by that VK over there, and that's because he was shooting the main weak spot of this tank, being the cupola. But to be honest, that is the only weak spot I can really think on this tank. The lower plate of this vehicle is not the most well armored, but it's about 180 millimeters thick. Now, to put that in comparison, when you angle this tank, you're getting up to about 220 millimeters. At an angle here, like this VK's aiming at me, he's not going to be able to penetrate my sides because the sides are just ridiculously thick. And that front plate, as I said, is about 220 at an angle like that, which means he has to have 220 pen, and he has to shoot it right in that front plate. And I've got pretty big tracks, so those will absorb some of the damage if he does hit that. You wiggle the tank back and forth because it actually does have a decent traverse speed, but because of that lower plate being 220 thick, that is the weakest spot of the entire hull on the front. The upper plate is about, I'd say, 220 when aiming dead on, and then when you angle it, becomes like 250, 260. So it's a very well armored tank. So the whole upper part of this tank is almost impenetrable. And as I said, if you angle at an angle like this, it's almost completely impossible to pen it unless you do load premium ammunition. And because this tank has such a healthy amount of hit points, it's sitting over 1,600 hit points, it's really able to receive a lot of shells. You saw in that game, even when I was at such a low amount of hit points, I was still aggressing towards the enemies at full speed, literally. I never once stopped and backed up. I always kept aggressing forwards, and that's just because it's such an aggressive tank. It's got a very accurate gun, believe it or not. You just wait for that aiming time to go down, and it hits 90% of its shots. Overall, the gun is pretty solid on this vehicle, and if you don't like the lower damage gun, you can put on 122 millimeter. Unfortunately, it doesn't have the pen, but it actually does gain some damage per minute. But overall, it is a very solid tank. And fortunately, it doesn't get the standard Russian 5 degrees of gun depression. It's not much better, but does get 6 degrees. Now, as I said, though, it does have that cupola on the top of the tank, and unfortunately, that's only about 160, 170 thick. Now, that's still going to bounce quite some shells if they don't fire premium ammo. It still is a pretty easy target to hit. However, the sides of it are angled, which means that if any shells do hit the angled parts of the cupola, they are going to bounce. And you can angle the turret like this. An angle like this, you can't penetrate the cheeks of the turret next to the gun mantlet, and the gun mantlet is just completely impenetrable. And also, that cupola is becoming angled, so now it's about 200 millimeters thick in that cupola, which is pretty well armored. And all you have to do pretty much to avoid getting penned is just back up and forth, use your turret traverse speed, which is pretty quick on this tank. Just make it a very hard shot on the middle of that cupola, because as I said, the sides are angled on it. It's like a miniature KV-4 turret. So if you wiggle the sides back and forth, it's going to make it a very hard shot on that cupola. Also, just when you're aiming at somebody, don't sit still. Don't let them have the ability to aim in on you, because when they're looking at your tank, that cupola is a lot taller than your vehicle, which means that the enemy can be aiming at your tank and you might not even know it. So never sit still in a KV-4. You always want to be moving. And for how heavy this vehicle is, it actually has a pretty decent top speed, because this thing weighs at 106 tons. Believe it or not, that is actually more than the KV-5. It is only less than the VK100-01P and the VK168. This is the third heaviest Tier 8 in the game. Super, super heavy vehicle. And as I said, because of it being so heavy, you would probably be surprised that it actually has a pretty good power-to-weight ratio. It's very easily able to get up to its top speed of 30 kilometers per hour, stay at it, and as you saw in that last game I played, I was very easily on Himmelsdorf able to push on my enemy and pretty much surprise them with just how good this tank is. Now you can see there, one shot absorbed into the track. Unfortunately, that T-34 just got a shot right into our cupola. That is really one big weakness on this tank. So you definitely want to try and hide that. But you can see here again, I'm just rushing towards the enemy. And again, I'm going 30 kilometers per hour. It just never really slows down. It's got an excellent power-to-weight ratio. And there is yet again another VK-45. See if we can get a shot in that SU. No, we do not. I would definitely not call this the most accurate gun, but it is a Russian tank, so what can you expect? But here we go, aiming on this VK, and you can see this AP pen is just amazing. It pretty much tears apart any enemy vehicle you can go up against. That SU doesn't even bother to shoot any standard ammo at us, just shoots HE, does only 266. If you were running any other vehicle there, you probably would have taken 300, if not even 400 damage, because the sides of this tank are even 150 millimeters on average thick. That is just ridiculously thick. And thankfully, that SU-152 magically took that shot for me instead. You can see here, this VK is just bouncing shell after shell on us, 1200 blocked already. Now we're slowly going to turn around. The traverse speed isn't amazing, but as I said, it also isn't too bad for judging how heavy this vehicle is. And one nice thing, as the KV-5 does as well, is ramming. When you weigh 106 tons here, I actually tried to track him so I could show my friend just a ram with it. But unfortunately, he could repair his track. But you can see there, I literally took 106 off that SU-152 with that little love tap. That was one of the lightest taps I could have possibly done in the game, and I literally took 100 off him. So you can imagine what would happen if a medium tank were to roll around a corner, or just anybody were to clip into this vehicle, because you can see it is a super, super long tank. So it is pretty easy to just clip somebody with the side of your vehicle while you're driving up somewhere. Now you can see in this game, things aren't going super well for the team so far. Full health Luva, we got that LTTB, and my Tiger 2 is just being surrounded by all corners. But again, I'm using this gun. It actually has a pretty decent damage per minute of 1900. It's pretty much on par with all the other Tier 8 heavies. But you can see, again, I'm just tearing apart the enemy. No premium ammo needed in this game yet. We've blocked 1200 damage, 2920 pulled out. Again, I'm going to side scrape, see if we can bounce the shot. Come on. Yes, we do, right through the side armor of this vehicle. It is just so impressive how well the side armor really works. It bounces 90% of the shots fired at. Again, this Luva pulls out, bounces another shot on our side armor. And it's really impressive how well this tank bounces shots. You wouldn't think it would because of how big and boxy it is. But to be honest, I pulled it out, and I did pretty impressive judging how big this tank is. So, to be honest, I'm enjoying this tank. And to be honest, I would also rate this vehicle right here above the T26E5 Sheriff, which is in the store for $50. I had more fun running this tank today than I did in the whole day yesterday running that Sheriff. And you can see we pulled at 3.6 thousand damage. We blocked quite a bit of shells. Again, we're going 21 kilometers per hour, even uphill with this very heavy tank. So you can definitely see it does its job, and it does it quite well. There was never one moment in this game where I really was scared of any enemy I pulled up against. Now you could be saying, well, you didn't show us a Tier 9 match. I had a couple Tier 9 matches, but I didn't want to show them just because these were the most aggressive matches where I could really show the raw power of this tank. But I'm going to say now, you definitely don't want to pull out a KV-4 on like an E75. I would definitely side scrape, but I'm not going to rush an E75 with my tank. I know that my APCR will 10 times out of 10 penetrate that E75, even when he's trying to angle his best, because 303 mil of pen, ooh, that is some sweet penetration. But still, it's not going to make a difference. An E75 will pen you back 9 times out of 10 unless you are side scraping. So don't go rushing up against like an RHM or anything that's going to nail you. But I will say, I have bounced quite a few RHM shots, and this LCTB thought, oh, I'm going to be able to get over this ridge before this KV-4 reloads, but no, this gun has a very nice reload. You saw there another bounce, 3,945 damage dealt. We pulled out the mastery. We got a steel wall, 2,000 blocked, 5 enemies destroyed. You can really see why I am liking this tank. It just does the job, and it does it really well, especially for this being a free-to-play tank. Honestly, I think the KV-4 is one of the best lines to run in the game, and it really surprised me when I went over the Blitz stars, and I saw only 1,400 players have ran it in the past 90 days. You compare that to a tank like the IS-3, 3,500 players have ran that. That's almost 2.5 times more players running the IS-3 than the KV-4. Then you take a look at the tier 10s. The IS-4 has about half the amount of players running that tank over the IS-7. And in my opinion, I think the IS-4 is just as strong, even if not stronger than the IS-7. And it's got better pen, it's got, a pretty solid top speed. The armor is one of the most reliable armor profiles in the game for that IS-4. So I really feel that this is one of the best lines to go down. The KV-4 is awesome. I think I might even do a review on the ST1 if you guys do want to see one, because I do have this tank in my garage, and I pulled out a 5,000 damage game the other day in this tank, pulled out the mastery. It's just a great line in general, and I think all the tanks also look very, very nice. You can see they're very clean cut. The IS-4 is a very nice looking tank as well, and they're very similar playstyles, which is really nice. You may say, well, the KV-4 is a very different playstyle. It really isn't. You want to hide your lower plate, you want to angle the tank, you want to use your side armor. They have very, very similar playstyles. So I hope you did enjoy this video and my little review on the KV-4. And yes, if you do think about going down a new line, or you're wanting to get a new heavy and you haven't gone down the IS-4 line, I would definitely suggest it. Don't think of it as a basic starting Russian line. It's actually a very skilled tank line to go down if you don't know how to run these tanks, because the KV-4, you do have to angle that turret. As I said, you have to constantly be paying attention where to go, because if you push the wrong way and your team gets obliterated or you get obliterated, you can still be taken out in this tank. I'm not saying it's invincible, but it can be very, very detrimental to your team if you do push it in the right scenario. And one of the major things I really found with the armor profile is that new players have no clue what this thing is, because as you guys know, no new player is going down the KV line because it doesn't look that exciting. The IS-4 line, it's at the bottom of the list. It breaks off of the KV-1, then it goes to the KV-2. A lot of people just see the KV-1S IS, they go straight down that line, or they go for any of the other tanks in the Russian tech tree. They don't really go for the IS-4 because it's all the way at the bottom. Nothing about the characteristics of the tank seem that spectacular. People look at the damage when they first start off. They see, well, an IS-7's faster, it's got more damage. What's the point of the IS-4? T-62A's got more damage per minute. You know what I mean? The IS-4 is just a very just not a great regarded tank. So I hope that this video did bring a little bit love back. And if you haven't gotten this tank, I would definitely suggest to go for it over most of the other tanks that are currently in the game. But other than that, guys, I hope you did enjoy this video. As always, make sure to smash that like button if you did. If you didn't, let me know why you didn't in the comments down below. Hit that downvote button. Let me know. I love to accept any criticisms that you do have. And other than that, I'll see you in the next one. Don't forget to subscribe.